Dentistry doesn't enforce that you need to measure the bite. The standard of care is using paper and ink, which is ridiculous. The ink doesn't explain what needs to be treated.
What is the biggest thing that you're seeing whenever it comes to bite analysis?
Without the T-scan technology to measure the bite forces, nothing the dentist is using actually measures the bite forces or the bite timing. And this is why the assistants might see a patient come back.
In today's world, we're so focused on being as efficient as possible. It sounds like this is a way to fix an inefficiency in the practice.
Teeth are rubbing against each other, banging into each other, wearing each other out. The T-scan sensor can measure all those damaging forces and make intelligent decisions about what to adjust.
What can dental assistants do to help in that process?
You know, I've always had just one goal for Dental Assistant Nation, and that was to reach as many dental assistants around the world as I possibly could. So thank you for being a part of the community. And I want to make sure that you have hit the subscribe button so that you can not only help us spread the message and we can grow our reach, but also to make sure that you are getting the latest episodes delivered right to you the moment that we drop them. We are all about dental assistant education and empowerment here at Dental Assistant Nation, and we want to make sure that we are reaching as many dental assistants as possible. So thank you in advance, not only for being a part of this community, but for helping us spread the word.
Hey everybody, it is Kevin Henry, the founder of Dental Assistant Nation and editor-in-chief for drbicuspid.com. I so appreciate you joining us for another episode of the Dental Assistant Nation podcast. We appreciate the sponsorship of Care Credit for this episode as well, just so you know. And I am thankful to have on today Dr. Robert Kerstein. Dr. Kerstein, how are you today?
I'm good. Thank you very much for having me, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to your listeners.
Absolutely. No, I'm excited about today's topic. I think it's going to be one that's really going to resonate quite highly with our dental assistants. But before we dive into that, I'd love for audience just to know a little bit more about you.
Well, I'm a prosthodontist. I trained at Tufts Dental School for regular DMD, and then I went on to Tufts Prosthodontics. And that's actually where I got involved with computerized bite analysis, because we had in 1984 the first T-scan, and I was exposed to it and started studying it. And now 42 years later, it's now 42 years. You know, I've published a lot about it, and I've taught a lot of dentists about the benefits of it. And so bite function and, occlusal analysis, computerized occlusal analysis has been a big focus of my career. And it's been a great aid to my patients and offers a lot to dentistry. I'm really honored that you would like to talk about it today, as a topic for your dental assistants to learn about.
I am, because, whenever you and I were talking before the podcast, you were mentioning that this is what we're going to talk about today is something that dental assistants often see in the practice, and then maybe they could alert their dentist to what's going on and why. What is the biggest thing that you're seeing whenever it comes to bite analysis, and what can dental assistants do to help in that process? I'm curious.
Well, dental assistants are directly involved in bite analysis. Usually they might be doing scanning, or they might take models, impressions, or they might help the dentist with articulating paper chairside while he's adjusting. A lot of dentistry doesn't realize it, that without technology, without the T-scan technology to measure the bite forces, nothing the dentist is using actually measures the bite forces or the bite timing. And this is why the assistants might see a patient come back for a few visits after they get their new crown, or the dentist is grinding and the patient says, no, didn't change my bite any in that spot, and they go back and mark again, and the assistant dries the teeth, and there are all these ink spots, and the dentist chooses one. The dentists are actually guessing at the ink. They don't really know what they're seeing, and this is important for the dental assistant to understand, because there is technology available that if the dentist was made aware of its benefits, they might reconsider what they're doing. And computer-guided occlusal adjusting is what we're talking about. The ink only marks the teeth, but there's no subjectivity. There's no looking at the ink and saying, I think it's that one. That's where the dentist get into a lot of trouble. And the dental assistants see it probably almost every day, especially when people come back and complain about their new dentistry.
And when the dental assistants see those people coming back in and they realize maybe what is going on with the bite, and as you said, some of the ink markings that may be guessed at, shall we say, is it something that the dental assistants should raise a hand and say, we need to talk about this? And if so, how could they do that? I'm curious for your thoughts.
Well, I think the scenario is very common, actually. And I treated many people who had this same kind of story, where they had a few fillings changed, or they had a few crowns installed, or someone finished Invisalign and their bite wasn't comfortable, and the dentist tried with paper and ink and shim stock to get their bite better, and they couldn't do it. And the patients had to come back many times, and the dental assistants are obviously exposed to that. So when that situation occurs, enough times that the dentist is clearly struggling and, hoping Mrs. Smith will adapt and say, please go home, you can get used to it, I'm sure you'll get used to it, or, that must be better. And the patient's saying, yeah, I don't really think that's better. The dental assistants see this. This is where they talk to their dentist about the idea of using measurement technology, T-scan bite technology, to actually measure the bite forces. And then the dentist learns how to use the data to choose the right places to adjust. And it truly is the right places to adjust. These sensors are used all over the world in many machining industries, high-tech industries. Automobile parts are machined by TechScan sensors. Engine gasket seals, tire tread is developed by T-scan sensors. TechScan sensors are used all over the world to control the way surfaces that mate, mill, and mesh last, and make them last so that they don't have to be replaced as quickly or they don't damage themselves as quickly. And that's exactly what teeth are doing. Teeth are rubbing against each other, banging into each other, wearing each other out. The T-scan sensor can measure all those damaging forces and make intelligent decisions about what to adjust instead of subjective ones, which is really trying to choose ink spots that actually studies show don't measure anything about the bite. They only do one thing, the ink spots. They mark where the teeth hit, but that isn't enough information for a dentist to be able to intelligently adjust to high precision. What they look like when they touch means nothing about how much force is in them or what the timing is or how much pressure they're applying.
So I've got to ask the question, why are ink spots still being used in the dental practice then? Why is that still the standard of care, shall we say?
Well, it's a very good question. One I'm not sure I have the correct answer for, but it's believed that it does work. The method is taught as if it works, which is that big marks are forceful and little marks are light force, and middle-sized marks all the same means the bite is balanced. And multiple studies now show that none of that is true. And so why it's being taught and continues to be taught is a real question. However, there is importance in the ink method that a TechScan sensor, a T-scan sensor doesn't have any ink on it. It measures bite pressure, but it doesn't mark the teeth. So the way you use TechScan technology is you record the bite pressures with the sensor, and then you mark the teeth which are problematic, and you know exactly where to adjust because it tells you with the T-scan data that it's on the mesiobuccal cusp of the upper left first molar, and then you mark that area, and then you only adjust that area. You don't look at the ink and say, I'm going to choose it because it looks a certain way. Mm-hmm. And this is a major improvement for the public because there's a lot of indiscriminate random grinding that goes on that isn't helpful and often destabilizes a patient's bite. And I'm sure some of the dental assistants listening have seen that happen.
If patients keep coming back to the practice, we know not only is it not good for the patients, but we also know that it's not good for the bottom line of the practice either. And so I know in today's world, we're so focused on being as efficient as possible. It sounds like this is a way to fix an inefficiency in the practice.
That's a very good point. It's a tremendous way to fix the efficiency. So there's a couple of ways that it does that. First, I treated many people through the years from around the world who sought me out for T-scan evaluations after they couldn't get comfortable with their new dentistry. And I was able to solve their problem often in one visit, and they were really surprised because they went back to their dentist many times and it wasn't solvable. And they were often taken aback. Like, I don't get it. You did this in one day and I've been just seeing my dentist. Why doesn't everyone have one of these bite computers? They would ask. And, I often didn't have a good answer for that. But, dentistry doesn't enforce that you need to measure the bite. The standard of care is using paper and ink, which is ridiculous because it doesn't measure anything. So having said that, so that's one way, is that if you do have a complication and you do have the T-scan technology, you can readily solve it in a small number of visits. So that improves your efficiency. The other way it improves your efficiency is when you deliver the cases that the people are receiving, such as new crowns or a quadrant of fillings or a fancy implant case or a smile design, you use the T-scan data to install the case. And then you are not randomly, indiscriminately grinding, and you aren't leaving bad forces on the case, and you are controlling the timing, and you do send the patient out the door with a much more refined outcome that is high precision, high balance, and measurable. And that changes how many visits after you give them the case that they have to come back. Typically, I would have them come back in a week to reevaluate it. And then maybe I'd have them come back in a month to reevaluate it. And with instructions that if their bite became uncomfortable, to call me and to make an appointment. And compared to what was coming into my office, compared to the numbers of outside patients who weren't getting their dentistry installed with the T-scan technology, my patients needed far less post-operative visits. It was really really very visible, very telling, especially when they would ask the question. They all ask the question. I don't understand why everyone doesn't have one of these.
Mm-hmm. How does the assistant fit in with the actual T-scan usage? I'm curious. How did that work in your practice?
Well, there's a couple of ways. First, the assistant can be taught to record data, and that's a skill. T-scan doesn't work because someone owns one. They have to learn how to use it, and training is very important and also very available. So they can be taught to do some of the work that a dentist might do in a way that's very effective and saves the dentist time. When it would come to adjusting things, I would do all the recordings. But if I was diagnosing someone, I could have my staff make recordings while I was in the other room, installing a crown on someone else or, delivering an implant case. And then I would come in and I could read the data, right? But they would have to do a very good job with getting the data. And of course, it's a learned skill. Having said that, it's like an assistant can learn to take x-rays. An assistant can learn to take impressions or to do intraoral scanning. In the same way, they can learn to use T-scan to effectively gather data. As far as being an aid in opening the eyes of the dentist to the need for this, if there's a repeated patient who keeps coming back that they keep having to see, that's exactly where the dental assistant could, talk to their dentist about, listen, I know we have a lot of these patients who keep coming back. Mrs. Smith is just another example. Last week we had Mrs. Jones, and the week before we had, Mr. Jones. And we could save a lot of time if we looked into the T-scan. And so the dental assistant, can help the dentist see there is a better way. It's a much better way, right? And these sensors, like I said, they're used all over the world in all these industries.
Yeah.
And those industries aren't using paper and ink to adjust engine gasket seals, believe me.
I'm thankful for that. I've got to be honest with you. I'm very thankful.
Very true.
When I was doing some of the research ahead of this podcast, I was fascinated that we're so enamored with AI right now and all these technological advances in dentistry. And yet this is an area where it sounds like dentistry has not advanced for some reason.
Well, it has resisted moving into digital measured occlusion, which is an entire science unto itself. We have, I don't know if you saw anything, but we have many volumes of how the T-scan can be used. And that's T-scan with implants, T-scan with orthodontics, T-scan with Invisalign, T-scan with TMJ, T-scan with making a patient occlusal diagnoses, T-scan in posture. So there's all kinds of uses for the T-scan that dentistry hasn't put into the mainstream in order to hold on to this belief about using paper and ink as a standard that's not very good for the public. The public doesn't know the dentists are guessing, and dentistry doesn't want to face that the dentists are guessing. Mm-hmm. And this is a big problem from the standpoint of quality of care and patient well-being. Unfortunate is a patient can go to a dental office for a routine procedure, like 2 fillings, and have it done, and then the dentist can grind away the wrong contact, change their bite, and then the patient now goes into a tailspin, and they don't realize this is a possibility, and what it's tied to is essentially the paper, right? The dentist looks at the ink and says, yeah, I think it's that one, and then grinds away what he thinks he should grind away, or she thinks she should grind away. And that may be a very important contact to hold on to. And you would never know that until you measure it with technology to see what kind of pressure mapping it is, what kind of timing it is. And now the patient has a bite problem and they go home, the Novocaine wears off, and they're like, gee, my other side touches weird now. I had the fillings done over here, but this doesn't, right? And then when the patient comes back to the office with that issue, post-treatment issue, the dentist just can't really resolve it. The ink doesn't explain what needs to be treated, and the marks, the way they look, doesn't explain what's important to treat. And so they don't know what they changed, and they don't know what is wrong either. And this now sends the patient into a tailspin. So unfortunately, this risk is huge, and it happens all over the world. And for many years, even today, I still get contacted by patients who find my phone or my email and ask me about, what they should do because the bite change that they went through from a routine dental procedure.
Well, and to be honest with you, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on this podcast, is to alert dental assistants that this may be going on and let them know what they can do, and also prepare themselves with knowledge and to really learn about what this is so that they can have that talk with their doctor if they see this occurring.
The Chicago Midwinter Meeting. It's one of the biggest meetings in the dental industry every year, and this year is going to be extra special because I'm going to be talking to dental assistants at the meeting, and I can't wait to be a part of it. So dental assistants and dental team members, join me Friday, February 20th, as we talk about harnessing the powers and personalities in the dental practice. Why can't we all just get along? We're going to talk about that. And then Saturday, February 21st, it's going to be extra special because dental assistants, this one's just for you, as we talk about battling and beating the demons of dental assisting. So join me at the 2026 Chicago Midwinter Meeting. I can't wait to see you in the Windy City.
So I'm curious, if somebody wants to reach out to you, if they want to learn more, what's a good way to do that?
Well, TechScan, the company, has a website, www.techscan.com/dental. And the website has information about sales and capabilities and seminars and learning videos and things like that. So it's very informative. People can contact me directly at my email, which is tmjdoc, just the way it sounds, at ix.netcom.com, which I'll provide you the real spelling for, or my website, which is www.drrobertkerstein.com. And there's a lot of information both on my website, about training, about these issues with respect to the paper marks being highly ineffective and courses that are available, things like that. And they can also reach out if they're interested in reading more. They can look into these books. You can see at the bottom, IGI Global. They're a publisher in Hershey, Pennsylvania. If you search my name, Kerstein, you'd be able to find these 4 volumes that are really an encyclopedia about the entire science of measured digital occlusion. So there's a lot of information out there. It's just it hasn't reached mainstream dentistry, and the difficulty of that is the patient well-being issues. Patients are at risk having dental procedures done with bite changes they're not expecting, and a lot of it has to do with the medium being used, the articulating paper, and the dentist really not knowing which ones to choose.
Well, we're glad to let dental assistants in the dental industry know a little bit more about it. And Dr. Kerstein, I thank you for your passion and your time today. I've enjoyed the conversation.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, and I'll look forward to seeing the episode on your site when it's up and running.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And we appreciate all of you for listening to this episode of the Dental Assistant Nation podcast, powered by CareCredit. And until next time, it's Kevin Henry, founder of Dental Assistant Nation, signing off. And as always, wishing you nothing but success ahead.
Thank you all.